For some reason, it was a plastic wrap of sandwiches that stuck in my hand. We travelled for hours to reach a small community which nestled on the side of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And when we approached the community, the scale of what they'd been through was tragic. A whole generation, a middle generation had died due to HIV and AIDS. The children were left, and so were the grandparents. And somehow, they had to carry on, even though they lost their workforce, their income. And what was strange was that it took us ages to get to this village. But we'd just passed some of the most beautiful hotels, the tourist hotels leading people up to Mount Kilimanjaro. And the beauty of the place was stunning. And yet still, I sat there with my plastic wrap sandwiches trying to process what was going on. We could reach these people. These people were within reach. But it seemed like no one was reaching out to them. Apart from the community, the CAFOD community, the sisters and volunteers who go out and seek help in the villages, to go out and find out what were their problems, and basic food packages, healthcare. And it was these volunteers who gave that little bit of time, were able to reach out to those who needed help the most. It was me sitting on the side of that mountain with my plastic wrap sandwiches. And for most of my life, I've grown up with plastic wrap sandwiches. I've grown up in a safe environment. And these terrible stories have been invisible to me. I've not heard them. Who will tell their stories? So my name is Kieran and I work for this story, and my role here today is to help you to tell your story better. Because stories are one of the most powerful ways in which we can change the world. And when we look at storytelling training, sometimes we think, so why do we need storytelling training? We're not in communications, we're not about to write a book. But I want to convince you today that the stories you hold have great power for changing our communities and also around the world. So I want to invite you to take a step back and just think about the power of storytelling. And if we look at one single individual, Jesus, he's radically changed society, culture, history, theology, philosophy, art, architecture. And how did he do this? Did he write tomes of theological books, philosophy books? No, he told a story. He told simple, clear stories which have been passed down carefully from generation to generation. And when we go to Mass, we share those stories. And those stories have great power for healing and transformation. So never underestimate the power of a good story. For stories have the power to comfort, to connect, to transform, and even to heal. If you think about it, we surround our children with stories to keep them safe, to help them make sense of those complex and often scary world in which we live. And those narratives they carry for the rest of their lives. And stories also help to shape and understand who we are, what are we about, and how can we find meaning in what can sometimes feel like a meaningless universe. And if we take a moment to reflect on this, we can see that our lives are held together by stories. For stories contain the meaning in which we make sense of the world. The universe is made of stories, not of atoms, says American poet Muriel Rukeyser. And psychologists will take it further. They'll say, we become the stories we tell ourselves. Just reflect on that for a moment. We become the stories we tell ourselves. So it's true that stories have incredible power and can transform the world for good. But we also must be aware that stories have a hugely destructive power. For stories can bring great harm to ourselves and to the world. And if we think about it, all wars and conflicts always start with a story. It's almost impossible to go to war without a story that pits the enemy as the other. Usually, great efforts are made to degrade the other person, to make them something good or evil. And for us, the nation state, for us to be the saviours, the heroes. This is the foundational work that's needed for any conflict to take place. Stories are needed to create harm in our world. And why is this? Because no one will fight for evil, they'll always fight for good. So you need a good storyteller to redefine what good is. And this all is part of what we call in storytelling the othering process. How we make people feel other than not us, them over them, and not our sisters and brothers in Christ. For any time we fail to see the eyes of Christ in the least of our sisters and brothers, as Jesus said, we are part of the othering process. And we work with CAFOD for many years, and I've worked in education, and most of the times we talk about CAFOD and the global family. And sometimes when we talk about the global family, it might sound a bit twee, it might sound a bit for children we talk about family. But it is the antidote of the othering process, is that we have to see ourselves in our global neighbours. We have to see the eyes of Christ in our global neighbours, otherwise we are part of the problem. And most of the problems we face today all stem from bad stories. So let me explain. Extreme poverty, rising global inequality, climate change, environmental breakdown, species loss, overconsumption. These are huge global challenges that continue to thrive despite our increased understanding of them and our awareness of them. It seems that even though we know about these problems, and even though we know how to bring a better world, we don't have the power to do so. And what does this have to do with storytelling? If we reflect on the fact that we are literally surrounded every day by millions of stories, mini stories, they're called adverts. And these stories are designed to convince us that meaning can be found by having more, by purchasing the next upgrade, and finding happiness through some consumer product, experience or service. These adverts and marketing messages form the background noise of our everyday lives. So never underestimate their power and their influence and control over our lives. But we might not feel that adverts influence our behaviours. After all, if you watch an advert around cat food, doesn't mean you're going to go out to buy the product. I don't even have a cat, why would I? But just think about the cumulative effect of all these stories in the background noise of our everyday lives, all sending out these small messages of telling us who we are and what we should seek. They can keep us trapped in endless cycles of consumer behaviour. They call into question our happiness. They call into question, are you happy with what you've got? Will people love you the way you are? Isn't life better over there? And these messages create a deep sense of inadequacy within all of us. Stories are powerful in changing who we are and what we're about. If we're serious about changing the world, which I hope we are, changing the world in a positive sense, something has to change, something deep has to change. We need a new story. I want to show you how you can start telling that new story. Because first of all, we need to open our eyes, first to the power of storytelling, and how storytelling can be both positive and negative for our world. And secondly, if we want to reshape the world we live in, we need to tell good stories, and all of us become better storytellers. And I guess the challenge that we all have in telling our story is we don't believe our stories matter. And there's too many dominant stories that we have in our media, in our press, and we live in an age of cynicism, where why would you give money to charity? It doesn't make a difference. Charities are in it for themselves. They're just there to make money. All these messages can undermine the fantastic work which CAFOD does around the world. We have to be careful that we are in a place to tackle these stories. But the only way to tackle a bad story is with a good story. And if we want to bring positive change to our world, we need to go within ourselves to find our stories and to share them with each other. So, who's up for it? But we should always remember, we should always honour our own story because it is who you are. And when we tell our story, we don't just give information, we're sharing our values, we're sharing our passion, we're paying attention to the things which we think are important to us, which reveals our inner personality. And if we don't tell our stories, we lose that opportunity to share something deep and intimate about ourselves. And I'm told that when priests get ordained, they have the bishop for the hands, the physical touch on them, the idea that something has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. But this is an outward sign. I can remember when I was a catechist for the RCIA program, those who want to become Catholic. And in Cardiff there's a big university, and we had some very well-read, intelligent students who came to me and said, I want to become a Catholic, but I don't want to go on that program. I've read the Catechism, I've also read the Bible. And the priest said, no, you have to go through the program because it's not about information. Storytelling. Christianity is where you meet someone who passes their faith on to you. We're all here because someone told their story and passed their faith on to us. And likewise before them, and before them, and before them. Want to reflect on that? Those stories originated from one place. We are connected to Jesus through storytelling. Living storytelling. So never underestimate your story. It's really, really important. And the question is, that's all very nice and lovely, but what does this mean for CAFOD? So now is a chance to reflect on how can we tell our stories to connect with the work of CAFOD. So, let's get some advice from the big man. Pope Francis. He tells us what he encourages. He doesn't tell us. It's very good at not telling us what to do. He challenges us to adopt a culture of encounter. And he keeps using this phrase. He's really concerned about this culture of indifference. It's not that people are bad, it's that people are indifferent to the needs of the poor. We've switched off. We no longer see. We are paying attention to other things. So the needs of the poor are left behind and forgotten. This is the culture of indifference which he is passionate about changing. And to overcome the culture of indifference, he wants a new culture. A culture of encounter. We need to work and ask for the grace to build a culture of encounter, this fruitful encounter, this encounter that returns to each person their dignity as children of God, the dignity of living. We return the dignity of each one of us when we tell our stories. Because we are all created in God's image, and really connected to those stories is really important. And he says, we cannot create a culture of encounter if I do not stop, if I do not look, if I do not touch, if I do not speak. I cannot create an encounter. And it's been a real challenge for us at CAFOD to think about how do we create this culture of encounter where this encounter is an overseas experience, is an overseas relationship. Do we start bringing more people over here to the UK? Are you happy that we're spending charity money on airfares? Or do we use social media to connect to some of the communities overseas? Well, that's good. There's some advantages to that. But what we're looking at today is how do we reach the 2 in 5 in our parishes? And reaching the 2 in 5 who haven't heard about CAFOD, are they likely to go to a CAFOD meeting to hear these stories? Are they likely to follow our social media if they haven't heard of this? So that's not very helpful. All we could do what CAFOD is really going to do, create more posters, more flyers, more stuff to put into parishes. And that can be useful, nothing wrong with that. But are those people going to walk past those flyers, those posters? Or is there something else we can connect them to the work of CAFOD in a deep and meaningful way? So at the beginning, we had the challenge. Is this the same old CAFOD with the same old story? Or are we trying to reimagine a new story for CAFOD? What is the new story for CAFOD? Was it a leaflet, a pamphlet, a poster? What is the new story for CAFOD? Was the one that you can tell, the one that you can share with your parish priests, with your friends, with your communities. I'm not just talking about standing up and speaking at Mass, which happens twice a year. There's a whole wide range of opportunities for sharing our stories with others. But when we share those stories with our commitment, our passion, our concern, that is when we can connect at a deeper level. And we don't need to be articulate for that. We don't need to be able to be an extrovert, to stand up. We just need to be able to honour what we believe is right and to share that with others. So, we're going to have another exercise to give us a little go. So, we're going to use Pope Francis' advice about stop, look, touch, and speak. In order to create a culture of encounter, first we need to stop and slow down. And I'm guilty of this, and many of us here are, is that we have so much information coming to us that when we get a CAFOD's side-by-side magazine, we read it just as you would a glossy magazine as a consumer. You can flip through the pages, scan reads, maybe you might dip into something, you might not, and move to the side. is that when we hear these stories, it's not to receive them as consumers. Oh, is that interesting? Am I interested in that? Do I pay attention to that? It's to stop and listen. Listen with the heart. The other one is to look, to see, to really see what is happening in our world today. Because the stories that CAFOD tells is the stories of what is happening to our poorest sisters and brothers, which are not being picked up by the media. We don't hear these stories any other way. We need to really look, stop. And also, the third one, really important, is how do we allow ourselves to be touched by the stories? The only way we can do that is by opening our heart to listening really attentively to the stories which CAFOD produces. Okay, so we've had a chance to reflect on the importance of storytelling. Recognizing stories, whether good or bad, have huge power if we understand them. And our lives are contained with stories, and we become the stories we tell ourselves. And the challenge at the beginning, of course, the quotes.
The real questions.
Oh yeah, that was it. The quote from Pope Francis: the real question is not who am I, but who am I for? And if we tell stories which are just about ourselves, what we think, what we're interested in, which is what a consumer society kind of encourages us to do, to be self-interested, when we tell stories that are not about us, but about our weakest sisters and brothers, those who are in need around the world, we're telling a different story, which is, who am I for? And that gives a new sense of belonging to the world. I'm no longer a part of this world just for myself or what I can get out of it, which is what happens when we allow successful marketing messages to define our lives. If we have another way of redefining who we are, is who am I for? That becomes one of the most important stories we can share. Hopefully you had a chance to reflect in your heads how telling your own story is worth it. Please go out and start thinking about how you can share your stories with others. As I said earlier, it's not just about standing up with a microphone, the great we can. It's telling those stories to the people you meet every day. And the group of people I missed out earlier, which I should make special reference to, because a lot of us work in parishes, but some of us work in schools, is the power of storytelling with our children. And if you haven't considered being a school volunteer, because it doesn't feel like your skill set, I can really swear by the fact that if you see it as simply going in and telling stories, fine. Because that is what we're trying to do. Share the stories of our overseas work. So going in and sharing stories with children can have a transformative effect. And I remember we did research, the education team when I worked there. We tracked children who had a CAFOD input at primary school, and then we did some research at secondary school, and they forgotten most of the stuff they learned in primary school, but they also remember the CAFOD lady who came in with a water bottle with dirty water. That simple storytelling sticks, and it will stick with that person for the rest of their lives. That's how powerful those stories are. You forget the information, but you'll remember the stories. And then, trusting your story and making sure that our work is rooted, CAFOD's work is rooted in a vision which links back to the vision of Jesus. A world transformed to reflect the kingdom of God. And this vision we're all trying to work towards. And we can all reconnect to that story. We can move mountains. So, become a storyteller. Trust your story. Trust the power of your story. And start thinking about the stories that CAFOD tells. That when you read them, don't read them just as a consumer, just flicking through, kind of glancing through it. Take a moment to stop, as Pope Francis encourages us to stop, to breathe, and really read it with an open heart. Put yourself in the shoes of that person which you're reading about. Imagine what that life is like. And try to understand the world through their eyes. Because all stories share a worldview, and our worldview can be quite narrow at the best of times. By listening to the rich stories that we share from around the world, we can open our eyes, not only to the needs of the poor, but open our eyes to this wonderful world which we're all blessed with, this great covenant. And the challenge for the culture of encounter by Pope Francis is the stories that we read, CAFOD that we hear, is how we take them out. That is where encounter happens. We can't ship more people from overseas to come over to the UK on speaker tours. It'd be great if we could, but that would make sense. But you can share their story. And I've had some lovely partners, you've probably met them as well, who just come in and they'll just whisper their story, very quiet voice. But their story is so powerful when you listen to our partners, because it's authentic. It tells you the way the world is, not how we think it is. And it opens our eyes to this world, and we need to be working together in order to bring the kingdom of God. So I just want to close with a reflection from Pope Francis, that every encounter is fruitful. Each encounter returns people and things to their place. And that's really important, is that if we could share the stories of our CAFOD's work, that encounter will bear fruit. Because we're not bringing information, because we want information, we can just hand out leaflets. But when we tell the stories, we're bringing our passions, our values, everything else to that story. So think about how you can tell the stories, go back to your parishes or work in schools. I just want to conclude on one last remark, which is your story is the greatest gift that you can share with others. My challenge to you going from today is to use it. Trust your story, and we can bring around the world, reflect